All right, let's do a review, and then I think I'm going to do an instructional block on Poland Defiant, the German invasion, September 1939. It's the Revolution Games, and let's see. I don't think the year's on the front, but I picked this up. This was on there. They had their 15 or 25% discount. Designed by Stefan Ekstrom. Map graphics, Joe Youst. The counter art, Charles Kibler, infamous name. And developer Roger Miller. All three of those names are been around for a while. All right, I'm going to give you the ultimate gamer's tip when playing a game. So you see there's two cups right there, right? One has that wonderful hot liquid in it called coffee, and the other's a chit pull cup. Do I have to say any more? This is not a good idea. Don't put your coffee cup in front of your chit pull cup. Yes, I did it, and I only put it back here to demonstrate. Now it's going away after I take a drink. I spent an hour wiping off counters and map covers and the desktop. And needless to say, I think some of my counters are going to bubble up. There's a couple of them in here that got hit. Some of the command chits. I couldn't believe I did it. All right, so let's take a quick look at casualties. Lots and lots of Polish casualties. Two German units completely wiped. And the Germans really don't get much reinforcements. They get a couple of headquarters, maybe an infantry division. I think they got one panzer division, and some Slovakian troops. Interesting system. It's a activation, so it's a chit pull, and you get, but you only get so many a turn. You might have 10 command chits in the cup, but you'll only get 4 or 5, maybe 6 actual activations. Now the Germans have a special rule when you look at the chart here, where see that red number 1 in the first turn. So the black 6 up next to their logo is how many activations they get. If at the end of turn 1, if they haven't taken one victory location, that's what the red 1 is for, then on the next turn they get one less activation. So it would say 6, they're only going to get 5. And believe me, I never did come close to catching up to the required they call it TRT, turn something, I don't know, or their German operational something or whatever. But anyhow, I never did meet that. However, you see the game ended on turn 9. Never did have to play turn 10. And the Germans only had 6 victory locations. They need at least 10 to get just a marginal victory. But they won because there's a secondary victory rule that if any German unit occupies a hex in Warsaw at the end of any turn, the game is over. And right there, they got in. I quit messing around, and I broke through some German units or Polish units that were right here, and just focused my attack there. And then the way the activations came up, the Germans get that Army Group North, Army Group South, or whatever. I just drove on into Warsaw, and the Poles never got a draw where they could combat that. They got a draw on the, what they call them, the rugs, the RUGs, and this guy was the only one in the area, and the only thing he had that could do anything with it, even with independent units, was right there, and there was no way they were going to attack across that river. The odds didn't even have enough odds to do it. So the Germans took Warsaw, took one of the hexes in Warsaw, and that ended the game. Because I'll tell you what, if they hadn't, I think the Polish would have won. So the deal was in this game is all these red cities, the cities with the red labels, those are victory point locations for the Germans. So you need to keep the Poles, and you, like I say, they got to take 10 of them if they don't take Warsaw. They got to take 10 of these things to get a win. So I know the next time as I play the Germans, I got to focus and go fast to these objectives. And it's hard to get these units out of these cities, even when there's only like 3 or 4 defense points. You've got to cut them off, isolate them, which that's a 2-turn process. And that reduces their defense strength to half. Then you attack them because the combat results when they're inside a city hex or a town hex, like, was it Gleiwitz there? And then, or see, it's a city, town, and then, I don't know what that called, a village? Yeah, village is the little white dots. All right, so here's your combat adjust. I know all the charts are right here on this on the thing. So if you're in a city hex, you get to negate the first retreat and the first step loss. If you're in a village, you get to negate the first retreat result. If you're in a town, same thing as a city, negate the first retreat and first step loss. So if you roll and attack these guys, and you get a D1R1, and they're sitting in one of those city hexes or town hexes, you didn't do nothing to them. They're not going to take a step loss, and they're not going to move. So you've got to get D2 or R2 to get them out of there. So, and if you look at the combat table, so if you attack on the 2-to-1 table, which would be good for a lot of games, you have got to roll a 5 to get them out of there. That's the only thing you roll. On the 3-to-1 table, you've got to roll a 4. And then you get 2 chances on the 4-to-1, and then it goes up after that. So you're looking to go 5, 6, 7, 8 to 1 before you even try any of those attacks. And bombarding them with your aircraft at the start, in the initial phase, it's almost a waste of time. Unless it's one strength point and you put all of them in there. You put like 8 or 10 or 6 attack points of air power in there. All right, so that was a problem. So lesson learned for that is get around them with your armor, which it's what the Germans did anyhow. Cut off their supply, which I found you can actually do it if you just, because your supply is, the first 4 hexes can be any terrain, but then it has to be on a road or a railroad back to their supply source, which for the Poles is Warsaw. So I did find out I ended up cutting off a bunch of units eventually after I realized what position I could get into to do that. I never took Danzig, which I was getting ready to, but it turns out I didn't need to. I took Lotz, or no, I was going to take Lotz. I took this little town up here, whatever it is. And I took, what was this, Regime or something like that, Radom. I took, where's that at? Lost it. I took Radom. So they would have had, I think, 7 by the end of the turn, maybe 8. In I don't know, probably 7, because I wasn't able to get anything going here. Your headquarters play a serious role in this game. You've got to have them in the right place. And for your headquarters that are assigned, they have particular units assigned to them. You have these other headquarters that aren't. Like the Germans have that one right there. So those guys, since they don't have any units, they can grab 5 units of anybody and give them commands. So you've got to get these headquarters units. Like up here, I ended up not being able to use these guys because that headquarters this headquarters, you see he's way over here. So then eventually I decided to move this one down where he could execute some commands on them, but didn't need to. So I was considering driving over here, trying to take this location, Lotza, whatever it is, Lamza, and then maybe trying to go south. But I don't have enough turns left for that. All right, so a smooth playing game. Very, very. You could play this in one sitting in an hour or two. Not a whole lot of toil. Your sequence of play is pretty simple. You do air for both sides. Then you do move and combat. And when that's all, chit pulls. Then when you're done with that, and it's not a lot of chit pulls. The most you might ever have is 12. And then you have a couple of action chits, which do not count towards activations, that you might, where the 2 sides might get replacements or something like that. And the others are going to be for your command. So you might get 12 command phase or 12 activations. And then, everything goes back in the cup. You start the next turn, depending on what it tells you for the next turn, and off you go again. At the end of the combat, you do your supply, and then you move your air interdiction markers back, which only the Germans are the ones that have that. And then you do your turn phase, and off you go to the next one. Like I say, if I would have just sat and played this, I'd have probably had this done in 2 hours. It's actually a pretty good game. I've been lucky so far. I haven't hit on a game that has given me left a bad taste in my mouth. This was a really, really good game. Like I say, convenience that all the charts are right there. All the charts you need are right there on the game map. The counters are simple, easy to read, easy to understand. Nothing too fancy with them. You've got attack and defend and movement. Headquarters, which I'll go over in some of the instructional, they have a command value, and they have a movement factor, or command range, I should say. And it's in hexes, It doesn't matter what the terrain is; it's in hexes. Aircraft interdiction, that just says that you reduce everybody by 1 movement point, or I'm sorry, 1 hex range, and then you got to check your reductions in the rules. Your bombers, like your Stukas and stuff like that, that's their strength. All right. So, the Army Group South has 2 4s and a 2, and Army Group North has a 4 and a 2. And then the Poles, they have a 4 over here that they can use. Informational counters, you have out of supply. You have these bridges on the map. The minute a German gets close to one, it gets blown up. So, I mean, why the Poles can use them, and only the Poles can use them. But like I say, once the Germans get there and get near one, it gets blown up. If they get in one of the hexes, it immediately gets blown up, so the Germans can never use them. But then once they're blown up, the Poles can't use them either. I never had to worry about it. We never got to that situation. So do your best to keep the Poles in supply. Keep them in those red city hexes, the victory point hexes. You can only stack 2. Headquarters and informational stuff doesn't count. So get them in there, and hopefully, if you can protect them from getting cut off and isolated, which wasn't real bad. Like I say, it took me 4 or 5 turns to get these 2 up here to a point where I could actually take them. But at the same time, I was using my armor to help, and that was a mistake. Get that armor out and moving. And it just, of course, you got to watch their supply too. All right, so like I say, a couple hours to play. This is a B+ game for the price, especially. I don't think it's even real expensive when it wasn't at a discount. And from what I understand, they have 2 other ones, Königsberg and, was it Narva or something like across something like that, that are similar games. I recommend them. Definitely, I recommend them. Good games from Revolution Games. Excellent games. All right, so we'll terminate that, and I'll come back on here and we'll do some instructional stuff. All right, thanks for watching. See you shortly.